Chag Sameach. I hope everyone had a nice time the past 2 nights with your Seders. Uh-oh. That's not good. So I thought that today, we're a small crowd. I thought it could be nice to do a little bit of learning together, to look at a text. And specifically, I thought that we could look at a text that would allow us to think a little bit about a pretty prominent feature of the Seder, namely the 4 cups. So before we look at this sheet, I'm curious to hear from you. What do the 4 cups do for you for the Seder? Help you get through. That's interesting because I'm hearing some chuckles that might be implying the opposite a little bit. And I've got a microphone here so that we can all hear each other. So raise your hands if you have a comment here. What do the 4 cups do for you at the Seder? What function do they play? Anyone? Yeah. What meaning do they have for you? Okay, Ben.
So we are a younger crowd at our Seder. So the people who do cups 3 and 4 are not as many as do cups 1 and 2, and it's usually adults who are doing those ones. Not that kids do the other ones, but you get the idea.
Great. So in some ways, it might be a function of how long are you able to last, right? How many cups did you make it to?
We're on the opposite end of the spectrum of getting older, and therefore we're all drinking grape juice.
Excellent. And we definitely had more grape juice consumed at our second Seder than our first, which I imagine you may have had too. Okay, Barbara.
They provide great family memories of people who never drank alcohol getting very giddy by Chad Gadya.
Okay, so the 4 cups definitely are livening up the Seder in some ways. Anyone else? Yeah, Esther.
It provides an opportunity to taste the different wines that are on the table.
Great. So 4 cups, you could have 4 different things in your cup for each one. Yeah, Lena.
The 4 cups give us 4 chances to offer praise to somebody or something.
Okay, so they're actually a way of offering praise. Fabulous. And in fact, praise is one of the central themes of the Passover Seder, right? We see it again and again. There's a lot of gratitude that we have in our Seder. Did I see a few more hands? Yeah, Marcy.
For us, it's actually not the 4 cups, it's the hineni that precedes the 4 cups. The same person always says the hineni, and the quest is how quickly can he say it. And this year, he is actually hiking the Pacific Trail, but we got a snippet of him on someone's phone. And so for both nights, for all 4 cups, we heard him on his phone. And it was one clip, and we just kept playing it. And it got funnier and funnier as we got through the cups.
Amazing. So always opportunity for some shtick and personal family traditions, and the 4 cups are no exception to that. Did we see other hands? Okay. So clearly, the 4 cups are fairly central to our experience of the Seder. They provide the Seder with some structure. They provide an opportunity for praise and also an opportunity for some levity and enjoyment. So there's a traditional, well, first of all, I think we're all familiar with the idea that 4 is a pretty significant number on Passover. So what are some of the 4s that we have as part of the Seder? Yeah. 4 children. Who else? What else? Yeah. 4 questions. Anything else? Great. So if you look at your page, when you say the Arba'a Lishonot Geula, the 4 languages of redemption, if you look on your page, that's actually at the top of the source sheet that I gave to you. So let's take a look at it. These are known as the 4 languages of redemption, and it's from a verse, actually. It's from a verse when we look at the description that God gives of what God is going to do for the Jewish people. And the Talmud understands this to be these 4 languages of redemption, or 4 words of redemption that are with which God brought us out of Egypt. And so Rashi actually specifically ties that to the 4 cups. So we're going to take a look at that right here. What are the 4 words? Hotzeti, hitzalti, ga'alti, v'lakachti. Hotzeti etchem, I will bring you out. Hitzalti etchem, I will save you. Ga'alti etchem, I will redeem you. V'lakachti etchem, and I will take you, or take you out. Here it's translated again as remove, but it's really I will take you. But Parashat Va'era. So these 4 languages of redemption, Rashi links them to the 4 cups. What's that about? What do those cups remind us of if we're saying that they're parallel to these 4 active verbs? Why would we have 4 cups for these 4 verbs? What's the function there? Or how might it impact our experience of the Seder? My mask back on. Yeah, I think Buzz has something. Oh, Barbara.
Well, there's a connection between drinking wine and joy, and there's a joy that comes with all 4 of these promises.
Beautiful. So we want to celebrate these promises. They make us happy, so we'll have some wine. Michael.
They also give us an opportunity to bless and thank God for each of the types of redemption.
Great. So they're an opportunity to thank God, perhaps with the words that we use to accompany those cups. So this is a moment of gratitude. Ben, two Bens.
I'm thinking about it in terms of learning and pedagogy, that, we have all these symbols and kind of mnemonic devices that we use in the Seder to study and to remember language.
Great. So 4 cups can remind us that there were 4 verbs with which God redeemed us. Great. So fun mnemonic device. Maybe alcohol and mnemonic devices might not mix so well, but certainly in the light of day, it can be helpful.
Yet Mitzrayim was a process, and it had to be done in more than one step.
Great. So in the same way that we move through our Seder in stages, we also left Egypt in stages. And it's a reminder to us of the many steps that were involved in that process. Great. Yes, Annette.
For me is that I don't know what redemption means, and it's to try and get at it in 4 different words.
Great. Great. So good teachers, remember, if you explain something the same way every time, that's not going to help. So maybe different verbs will help us a little bit. And maybe the experience of drinking wine will also help us understand what it means to be free. Okay. Did I see a few other hands? All right. So we've got this traditional explanation from Rashi. And that gives us one idea of what these cups are about. They're a way of expressing joy and gratitude for this experience of redemption. They remind us of the stages of redemption. And by structuring our Seder, right, through the cups, right, we do have these 15 stages of the Seder, but the cups really punctuate the Seder as we move forward. We're in some ways reenacting that process of redemption through those cups. Okay, I'd like to offer a different understanding of the 4 cups. Rashi's understanding that we just looked at is about something that God did, right? The cups are about praising God for God's actions. But now we're going to look at another explanation that actually associates each of the cups with people. So there's a 4 that we did not mention. Who knows 4? The mothers, Imahot. And in fact, Rabbi Isaiah Horowitz of Prague, a 16th century rabbi, he associates the 4 cups with the 4 mothers. So let's take a look. We'll do a little bit of learning. We'll see what he has to say about each of the mothers that would link them to a cup, and we'll see what we make of this. So the first thing to note is that when he goes through and lists the cups, he's associating the cup with what's going on at the Seder at that moment. So we've just done this twice. Let's see if we can recall where each of the cups shows up. So where's the first cup? Kadesh. Great. It's the very beginning, and we say the Kiddush blessing, the blessing over the day, as we do that cup. So we're going to see that's going to come into play in a moment. What's the second cup? Magid. Great. It's the cup that concludes Magid, but we fill it at the beginning of Magid. So what that means is that this is the cup of Magid. We say Magid, right, that whole long storytelling section of the Seder, that is all the story of this cup, right? We're saying that over this cup. Okay, and what's the third cup? Halal. Great. Actually, not, well, sort of. Sort of. But we're actually going to get to Halal at the end because we split up Halal into 2, right? We split up Halal into 2. We do part of it in Magid and we do part of it later. So he's going to characterize the 4th cup as the Halal cup, which is a little, I mean, really, we fill the 4th cup and then we say the blessing after, immediately. It's pretty quick. But he's gonna have Halal as the 4th cup. So what's the 3rd cup? Barech, Birkat HaMazon. And we tend to only do this custom at Seder, mostly. But there used to be a custom for special meals. You would fill a cup of wine and say Birkat HaMazon over a cup of wine. And then afterwards, you would drink the wine, just as we do at the Seder. So some of us may be used to seeing this at Sheva Brachot, the celebrations following a wedding. But we're not necessarily used to seeing this regularly. But some people did used to do this more commonly. So we have the Kiddush cup, the Magid cup, the Birkat HaMazon cup, and the Halal cup. And we're going to see that each of those sections of the Seder is now going to be linked to one of the 4 mothers. So let's get started. I'll take readers and I'll come around with the mic. So who wants to read about Sarah? Anyone?
The 4 mothers correspond to the 4 cups of wine at the Seder. Sarah is the first cup over which we say, "Who has chosen us from among the nations." Just as Abraham, our ancestor, chose from among the nations and converted the men, so too Sarah converted the women.
Thank you, Esther. So this actually refers to a Midrash about Abraham and Sarah. We're told when they left Ur Kasdim, right, where they lived, and they went to go to the land of Canaan, that they brought people along with them, and the Midrash actually says that they converted them. So this is suggesting, well, when we say Kiddush on holidays, we thank God for choosing us from among all the nations. And we're saying, oh, well, Abraham and Sarah, and specifically right now Sarah, they did that too. They brought people to a particular relationship with God. Thoughts about that? Does that strike you in a particular way? That's the thing that we're holding up about Sarah right here. That's the thing that we're holding up about Kiddush right here. Yeah, Barbara.
Yes, I would think more of the fact that Sarah gave birth to Isaac, and that allowed continuity and allowed our people to exist.
So it's actually very interesting that this is talking specifically about making more Jews, not in a biological sense, right? But in a sense of actually bringing people close to God and to Judaism in this different way.
I know that people, when they convert, use Bat or Ben Avraham Basara. For example, my name is Nomi Yona, Bat Avraham Basara. So whenever I go to the Torah, people say, she converted to Judaism.
Great. So we say that often we think about the idea of converts being called up as child of Avraham and Sarah. We think about that as because they were the first Jews, they're the ancestors of the Jewish people, and so in converting, you're taking on that ancestry. But actually, this Midrash is thinking about it in a different way, right? What is it that Abraham and Sarah did? They brought people close to Judaism. They brought people in. And so actually, it's very appropriate from that perspective for converts particularly to think of themselves and for us to think of converts as associated with Abraham and Sarah. Okay, let's look at Rebecca. Who's got Rebecca? Okay. Oh, Adam, yes.
Rebecca is the cup of storytelling. In the telling of the Passover story, we begin with degradation and end with praise. And that is how she began. The Haggadah begins with our ancestors who are idol worshippers. That refers to Esav, Rebekah's firstborn. And she ended with Jacob, who corresponds to the line in the Haggadah, and now we have been brought close to God. And also we begin with the degradation of we were slaves in Egypt. So too Esav was a slave forever, as it says in the Torah, the older will serve the younger. And Jacob is in Israel, as it says in the Torah, for you have struggled, etc.
Thank you. Okay. So this is reminding us of a main key feature of the Magid section of the Haggadah is that we tell the story. We start with the negative, we end with the positive. And we do that in two different ways. We start with idolatry, we end with worship of God. We start with slavery, we end with freedom. So how does that map onto Rebecca's life? According to this? Anyone? Yep, Mike?
Is it just me, or I always thought the reference to our ancestors worshiping idols was in reference to Terah and Abraham's family? It never crossed my mind that it referred to Esau. It seems a little forced to me.
Okay, so fantastic. So we might have thought about Abraham as having moved from idolatry to worship of God. This is suggesting Esau. And, just to be very specific, right, these two twins, Esau and Jacob, Esau came first. So if he's the negative one, Jacob's the positive one. Well, this one is mapping that out in two different ways. Fabulous. Okay, so maybe it feels a little forced to Mike. Anyone else? Anyone else think it's forced? Or think that maybe it fits in some other way? I want to notice that the rabbis give Esau a really bad rap. And this Midrash is no exception to that. I think there are lots of other ways to read Esau's story that do not see him as the negative one. He may actually be seen as a tragic figure in many ways. But this story, this Midrash is certainly reading him as negative. There's also something else that could be a little problematic or maybe challenging to us here, which is this Midrash isn't really about Rebecca, right? It's about her sons. So that's another way in which I would say, Mike, I think, yes, maybe this one does feel a little bit forced, right? It's not actually about something about her. The Sarah one was about something that Sarah supposedly actively did. She converted the women. Rebecca's is actually about the order of her sons. So, okay. But her sons would not be here without her. Thank you to the midwife. Absolutely. Okay. And in fact, we know that she has a relationship with God, that while she is pregnant, she has this conversation with God about her difficult pregnancy. And that God actually tells her something about her 2 children. And in fact, that line is right here in this Midrash, right? God tells her, Rav Ya'avod Sa'ir, the older will serve the younger. And that's kind of the basis for this idea that, that Esau was some sort of a servant to Jacob, that it's because of the prophecy that God revealed to Rebekah. Okay, so thank you, Esther. That's an important point. All right, let's do number 3. Anyone want to read Rachel? Okay, Elizabeth.
Rachel is the cup over which we recite the prayer after meals, because Joseph, her son, fed all of the house of Israel, and she was the core of Israel. As it says in the Talmud, any blessing that comes to a man is because of his wife, and Rachel was the wife of Israel.
Great. There's a 2-part piece of this. So this is the cup of Birkat HaMazon, of having eaten. And of course, during the famine, the children of Israel would not have been able to eat if it hadn't been for Joseph. He fed them, right? His prophecy allowed for Egypt to save up all that grain, and then he provided it to his family. But it's interesting. We could have stopped there because Rachel was Joseph's mother, so we could have kind of done that same thing of, well, her son did it, so maybe we're attributing his actions to her. But then there's this additional piece of she was the core of Israel, this idea that this Midrash from the Talmud, any blessing that comes to a man is because of his wife. So we're kind of bringing her back in there as well. Yeah, Elizabeth.
I also think about how Isaac met Rachel. And it wasn't, well, it could have been food too, but she fed the camels. She offered to give them water. So Joseph followed his mother's trait.
Great. So there are actually 2 stories that you're referring to. The story of Rebekah, who fed the camels, and then Rachel also met Jacob at the well. So they're both associated with wells, water providing sustenance, and certainly Joseph follows in both his mother and his grandmother's footsteps. Okay, 4th cup. And I particularly like this one since I did name my daughter's middle name after a verse that's about to be quoted here. So anyone want to read Leah? Louise.
Leah is the 4th cup over which we say blessings, Halal. We say all types of praise because of Leah, who said in the Torah, when she gave birth to her 4th child, Judah, "This time I will praise God." And from her came pleasant songs, since our teacher Moses, may he rest in peace, was her descendant and sang the song of the sea, Shirat Hayam.
Beautiful. Okay, so how does Leah connect to Halal, anyone? How does Leah connect to Halal? Hands? Okay, Ben.
Leah names her children as praises to God. And then the 4th one, this time I will praise God, where the names of the children are significant. They're all praises.
Great. Well, also, some of her children are named in sort of competitive ways, but Judah is special because Judah is a naming of praise. And so Leah is modeling for us and teaching us how to be grateful, how to show gratitude, how to praise. And that's what we're doing in Halal. I think I saw some other hands here. Yeah, Mike.
better choice would have been Miriam, who actually did lead the Shirat Hayam, and would be not in the context of a male. Of course, had to get the other matriarch in there.
Great. So clearly we have this idea of 4 matriarchs. So we're trying to map them out, and maybe there are other women who would have been, or other people who would have been better suited. Miriam certainly did lead Shirat Hayam, and was also a descendant of Leah, right? It's not just the men who were descendants of Leah. But, okay, great. Elizabeth.
I'm a little puzzled by the end of that because it says that Moses was a descendant of Leah. How do they know she wasn't a descendant of Rachel? Because the slave descended from all of the brothers.
But we do know which tribe everyone was from. So Moses and Miriam were from the tribe of Levi. And so Levi was the 3rd child of Leah. Okay. Other comments or questions? Yeah, Barbara.
I'm just amazed that this text is in our tradition from the 15th or 16th or 17th century, and this is the first I've seen it, and first I've heard of it, and I'm kind of surprised it hasn't been brought out into Haggadot or study sessions I've been part of before. So thank you, and it's beautiful and amazing, and a way to bring women into the Seder and into the tradition.
Thank you, Barbara. And I think it is a pretty amazing text. And it's a reminder that as absent as women have been from our texts, sometimes, even when they've been present, it hasn't been highlighted or given that much attention. So, I'm actually very grateful. This text came to my attention this year in particular because some people were posting it on Facebook. And a good friend of mine, Noam Sienna, whose book I shared, or I didn't share his book. I shared a compilation of LGBTQ individuals on, I think we looked at that on Sukkot this past year that he helped put together with Keshet. So he was also posting this particular text. And I read it and I thought, oh, what a great way to think about the Seder and the 4 cups. And so, yes, so it's really wonderful to have ways to share these texts. Absolutely. So any other reactions to what this Midrash does for our experience of the 4 cups? How is this a different way of thinking about the cups, thinking about the Seder from that first Midrash that we talked about? Right, the first one was the 4 languages of redemption, those 4 verbs. This one is 4 women. What does this say about the Seder if the 4 cups are parallel to them? What are we doing at the Seder if we're drinking these 4 cups for these 4 women? Yeah, Ben.
Ben said before, Passover is a pedagogical experience. This serves to individualize it even more. We all come out of Egypt ourselves, and we all have our own personal experience of the Seder and of that journey.
Beautiful. So we think of the Seder as a story about a nation, right? It's what happened to the Jewish people collectively. But in fact, if we look at those 2 versions of Magid, right, one of them is slavery to freedom, but the other one, the idolatry to worship of God, that one seems to be more linked to the stories of our ancestors, and that seems to be more of an individual story. And so by actually bringing in our matriarchs in this way, we're telling the story of Passover as one that's both about a nation and about individual people, right? And so we can think about ourselves both as individuals, as members of families, and as members of a nation. Other thoughts? What else does this Midrash do for us and for our experience of the Seder? Yeah, Lois.
I think with the 4 promises, it's about what God did for us, which of course we can be grateful for. But by talking about what each of the mothers did, it requires us to think about what actions are we going to take.
Beautiful. simple. If the 4 cups are for individuals, then we're not just recipients of redemption, we are active participants in it. We too, like our mothers, can actually be called upon, are being called upon to do something to help create the redemption that we're looking for. Thank you, Lois. And we're going to conclude with that. May we all be participants in whatever redemption it is that we are looking for. So we'll move to our Musaf service. Chen to you. Chag Sameach.